Welcome to Fishing for Bees. This is my YouTube channel on swarm catching and beekeeping. We've never purchased bees, we've never bought a queen, we never split a colony. Everything you see here, everything in the production yard is a swarm catch that we caught, standalone swarm. We just let them continue the way they are. We don't requeen them. We hope that they supersede the queen late in the fall, but pretty minimal management. Today we're going to be going into these and we're going to be taking off the last dose of the Formic Pro. So we do treat for mites, we do manage our bees, we just manage them pretty lightly. So I'm going to try and get in here and do this quickly. We are in a dearth now. We have a feeding station set up, which you'll see in the video. So here's the feeding station for the Nuc Yard. This is the Honey Super from the pollination contract, which had 10 frames in it, drawn out well, full, probably just a little over a gallon of honey. Too much of a pain to pull out the equipment to extract it again, and a lot of these bees, including that white colony, are behind. They need more weight, so I decided just to open feed it. It's all honey, so there's no potential of contamination. There's no sugar syrup in here. Anyways, you want to make sure that you give them enough room. So this was 10 frames, so I got it spread over 2 boxes and canted and with big openings. You want to make sure they have enough room to get in here peacefully. You're not establishing a battle royale. You want them to get in and get out and be alive and still have their wings intact when they get back to the colonies. So this is how I rob it out. 2 days, this will be done, bone dry and ready to go into storage. So this is the feeding station that I spoke of at the Nuc Yard. Not much to see here, so we're going to do some inspecting, but what I want to talk about is you need to start making plans. I see a lot of people that still don't have a plan for their winter configuration, what they're going to do. So they don't have a plan for what they're going to do for the winter. And they're asking, you know, should they build up to a double, or should they be feeding, or should they do this? You need to be realistic this time of year on what the bees are going to be able to do. For instance, if say I wanted this to be 5 over 5 over 5, in my head that's what I wanted. These bees are clearly telling you that that's not what they're going to do. They can't build up to that level this late, so you're not going to be drawing comb. If anything, you might be knocking colonies back, knocking them down to give them more reasonable and realistic space to manage during the winter. One of the worst things you can do is give them too much space. So I thought I was going to go in and take a look in these, but I can tell already that these bees aren't too happy. As I said, we're in a dearth. So I would like to evaluate if everybody's queen right, but to be honest with you, I think I got what I needed just by looking. What's happening is they're starving. These outside frames should not be so light. I went in to the bottom because all I'm looking for is evidence of a laying queen and that they're queen right. I can put the weight on them by feeding them, and it looks like I'm going to have to. These weights were pretty good a couple weeks ago. Also, I'm not going to freak out about not seeing brood, because we know that the Formic Pro can cause a brood break. It'd be nice to just see some evidence of an egg or something, but you got to remember that with the single dose, Formic Pro's been on these 20 days according to the directions, and I'm 2 days late getting out here. So that means it's been on 22 days. This one's not looking good, but I think I'm going to go back to my original plan of not inspecting, just getting the Formic off. Give them a couple days to settle down. I'm not even going to bother going in the top box. So just another example of what I'm trying to say here is you got to let the bees dictate what they're comfortable with. Sometimes going into winter, you should be looking at them and coming up with a realistic plan for them to go into winter. But Again, the Formic Pro is coming off. I kind of knew that this was going to be a mistake, but I made the mistake on the first one, right? I'm not going to continue to make my mistake by going in here when I know that the Formic Pro can cause a brood break, and it may be very difficult for me to find the few eggs that she's laying. Other than me irritating them, they were pretty good when I first opened it. This second box is a lot better as far as weight. I am going to block off these entrances. They could easily start robbing each other. You should see the way, well, you will see in the video how they're all over the feeding station. So no need to take the box off. We're just evaluating from the inside. Giving them a break, getting this Formic off, 22 days. Still a great population of bees for 5/5. We'll let them finish out robbing that honey super and then start evaluating the weights better. Looking for queen right colonies. Weight on that one's really good. So back to what I was talking about as far as your winter configuration. You don't have to be talked into being 20/20 or some people are feeling, because they're single brood management, that now that they're late taking off their honey supers, they need to figure out what to do with the honey supers, and they're firmly committed to dropping it down to a 10 frame. Let the bees speak to you. You know, I understand that maybe that's a goal, but sometimes it just doesn't work out that way, and in the best interest of the bees, it's okay to leave a honey super on top of a 10 frame. You don't have to go all the way down to a 10 frame. Just never leave a queen excluder in any of it, because you don't want her to get separated from the colony. If you have a small colony like this one, and we'll know more in a couple days, this one could be bust down. If there's not much going on and there's 5 frames that not much is happening, you can drop it down to a 5 frame and overwinter in a 5 frame. My point is everything is okay, everything's doable, but you got to keep in mind the basics as far as, first, I believe, moisture control, and then second, heat. Everybody's always so worried about heat, and moisture control, from what I've seen, and I've seen in errors in my own colonies, is what kills the bees. It's when the bees get wet, they die. It's not the heat. We've had 10 frame colonies, 5/5 survive. We've had 10 frame colonies that are deep, you know, all next to each other survive. We've had double deep survive. I think the bees are really good at working with what they have. The one thing that I recommend that you avoid is ever giving them too much space to patrol and defend. Too much space to patrol and defend first introduces stress. They're stressed that they got to protect that much area, and then they fail because they can't protect that much area. So robbing happens and they fail. Heating that area, bees are great at heating. That's why I'm saying I don't think you need to introduce any more heat. You should be concerned about moisture control. So back to being behind and making sure you have a plan. What's your plan for moisture control? I use quilt boxes. I'm not saying that's the greatest way, and that's certainly not the only way. But you're behind if you're just now thinking about it. That equipment needs to be ready to go. And your hives, if you're still sitting on honey supers and you don't know what you're doing, it's time to start making those decisions. As you see in this video, we have a honey super from this one right here that we chose not to extract. Setting up the equipment again, uncapping it and everything else to extract. Luckily, hopefully, maybe a gallon of honey would have been ridiculous. We're not going to do that. It's just too much work for not enough yield. But we have all these colonies that need some help. They could use that feed. So if you have honey supers and you have to get down to whatever, I mean, I've seen people do 3 deeps successfully. That's for breeding purposes and nukes in the spring and stuff like that. They build pollen and some great YouTube channels on it. But they survive. So 3 deeps all the way down to a 5 frame, all the way down to a 4 frame. Bees can survive. Bees can do it on their own. You'll be okay, provided you don't fall short on the other thing or other things such as moisture control and then heat retention. So they'll generate the heat. You want to make sure that the heat's not pouring out of here. Torpor is a fine balance between frozen to death and consuming through your resources, right? So if you create too much heat, they can start eating all your resources. So you don't want them to be like, you know, summer temperature in here. But also, if you can get to your colonies and you can take a peek and you can see how they're doing during the winter and you have a plan in place to slide some sugar bricks in there or some fondant in there, you can get away with lighter colonies because you're going to babysit them and you're going to manage them during the winter. That's what we're going to do with these. I'm not overly concerned that they're super light because I have fondant. We're going to have quilt boxes on them, and I'm going to be able to check them on the nice days in the winter and feed them. So if you still don't have a plan, in most of the country, you should at least have the plan. I'm not saying you need to be implementing, you know, quilt boxes or anything like that, moisture management, but you need to have a plan because you might need to source some equipment, you might need to build some equipment, modify some equipment, so you need to have that plan in place. There's a lot of great YouTube channels, and I recommend finding somebody close to you, you know, in a state neighboring you or in your state. Follow them, and hopefully they're publishing ahead of the game and quickly so that you're getting the information when you need it and they're not uploading a month later. We do try and get these videos to you quickly. So if you got any questions or comments, please ask them. I'd be more than happy to help you in the comment section or in private. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and then there's even a way to email us here on YouTube. So don't sit on the side too long. You got to figure things out. You got to come up with a plan, and a lot of it is acceptable. A lot of it is okay. The bees are going to work with it. So do the best you can. Be realistic about what your bees are telling you as far as what they're going to overwinter as, and go from there. Thanks for watching. I hope your bees are well.